Probably won't even see me on camera tonight. So, all right, it's 7 o'clock. It's time to get started. We're taking a break from the prophets this summer and getting into the book of Proverbs. And each of us are taking, several of us are taking different tasks with Proverbs. And I drew the task for money. I can't say I drew it. I actually picked it. So we'll look through. And if you've been in one of my classes on Sunday, hopefully it's going to be a little bit different. I'll try to encourage you to talk and let's look at some of the different things in the book of Proverbs. I've looked through this. And last night I came up here. We have an excellent book from the Memphis School of Preaching, one of the lectureships on nothing but Proverbs. And I went, oh, man, I wish I'd found that a couple of weeks ago. But some good information from that. And the guy who wrote this was Gary McDade. I think he was the preacher at the Gitwell Road Church of Christ in Memphis for a number of years. I don't know where he is now. I didn't look that up. But he broke it down into 8 areas. And as I was going through looking at verses that dealt with money and things like that, I broke it down into 4 or 5 areas, so maybe ours overlap a little bit. But to kind of get us thinking about money. Well, one of the first ones, we start off in the book of Proverbs in chapter 2. Also, you'll notice that my translations will move from one to the other because sometimes I'll find something that I like in the way it's said another way, and we'll point that out. We'll pull that out and talk about that. But Proverbs 2:2-5, so that you incline your ear to wisdom and apply your heart to understanding. Yes, if you cry out for discernment and lift up your voice for understanding. If you seek her, what are they seeking? You seek her wisdom as silver. And search for her as hidden treasures. Then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. Now my question to you is, why do they relate wisdom to silver? Because it's precious, because it's value. Well, is it value? Okay, because they go after silver. They work hard for those treasures. We do those things. I'm going to say they. I'm one of they. I do those things. I'm still working. I'm reading this and going, okay, maybe I should slow down a little bit. But he's relating this to people who are doing these things. Just like Jesus in the parables talks about things that people know about. Well, we know about going out, and I was just talking a minute ago, this month, 40 years ago, I was getting ready to take the bar exam and to go into the FBI. And when I got on the plane to go to Washington, Kathy had a tank full of gas. I had about $50 in my pocket, and I had a credit card with a $200 limit. And I got there and found out I had to buy clothes. There's certain things I had to have when I was there. And now I am just flat broke. Oh, and also all my debt from law school, okay. So I didn't have a whole lot. And wondering what I was going to do, they put me on the plane, and they drove to Mississippi and stayed with Kathy's mother until I got my first paycheck about 2 weeks later. And, oh, wow. And then so, that was a little scary. That was a little scary. But there were times that we had, times that we didn't, but we always had. We never lacked for food. But I was looking for that. I was waiting for that first check. Why did I want that job? Because it paid well, those types of things. And this is what we're looking at here. This is things that we can relate to. We want a good retirement. We want to be able to take care of ourselves, and so we work for those things. We work for that silver. We work for that gold. And so he's going to use that as an example of how we, with the same diligence that we strive to make a living, to subsist, that we also seek wisdom. Well, do we do that? Adam Clark, in his commentary on Proverbs, said, in the Brazils, slaves are employed to scrape up the soil from the bed of the Rio and wash it carefully in order to find particles of gold and diamonds. And it is a law of the state that he who finds a diamond of so many carats shall have his freedom. Searching for that thing that's going to make us free. What's going to make us free? I'm sorry? The blood of Christ makes us free. The truth, right? The truth will make us free. How do we gather that truth? By studying the scriptures, by absorbing this, growing in our faith. And this is what the writer is talking about here. He's telling us that we need to have that same diligence, that same effort that we put towards this, that we'll put towards. He's not saying that seeking after silver or gold is wrong. In fact, we're going to see a few verses, depending on how far we get tonight, we'll see a few verses where he talks about that, where it's okay to have wealth. But then what do we do with that wealth? And how do we obtain that? Happy is the man who finds wisdom, and the man who gains understanding, for her proceeds are better than the profits of silver, and her gain than fine gold. She is more precious than rubies, and all the things you may desire cannot compare with her. So we see this wisdom compared to silver, gold, and rubies. My question is this a charge to pursue wisdom with the diligence that we pursue monetary gain? Yes, I think so. That we need to pursue that. Proverbs 8:18-21. Riches and honor are with me, enduring riches and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, yes, than fine gold, and my revenue than choice silver. I traverse the way of righteousness in the midst of the paths of justice, that I may cause those who love me to inherit wealth, that I may fill their treasures. What's the enduring riches? Where did Jesus tell us to lay up our treasures? In heaven. Why? Yeah, moth doesn't, it doesn't rot. Moths don't eat it up, okay? That's where we lay up our treasures in heaven. Romans 11:33. Oh, the depth of the riches of both of the wisdom of God and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments and his ways past finding out. So we look for those things that are enduring. I don't know, Dennis may have told me this story some time back, but there was a guy who died, and right before he died, he had a chance to talk to St. Peter. And he said, I've made all this money, and I want to take it with me. I've had it all converted into gold, and I want to take it with me. He said, well, we're going to make an exception. We're going to let you bring it into heaven. So he dies and gets to heaven, and they said, what's in the bag? And he opens it up, and there's full of gold. And they said, what, you brought pavement? Okay. Things that are precious to us, pavement in heaven, right? Streets of gold. Things that we see sometimes are important. And I think, are there times in our lives when that seems to be more important than others? When's there a time in your life when you wish that you'd had the wisdom better than you had the money? After you've lost the money? What is it? Experience. What's the saying about experience and money? You gain money through bad experience, and you gain bad. How's that go? I can't think of what it is now. Experience comes through practice, and practice comes through bad experiences or bad decisions. We make bad decisions, we learn, right? I have a friend that as a young man, he got into trading, and his first trade turned out to be horrible. He lost a lot of money. Today, that young man does not lose money when he trades. He knows, he learned from that experience, right? That was a lesson well paid for. Some of us go to school to get that learning. Some people go out and practice it and learn it the hard way, the school of hard knocks. But these enduring riches that he talks about here are things that are forever. They're not going to waste away. They're not going to be lost. They're going to be something that's useful for us into heaven and for that hope. The tongue of the righteous is choice silver. The heart of the wicked is worth little. How much better to get wisdom than gold, and to get understanding is to be chosen rather than silver. These are just different ones. A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches. Loving favor rather than silver and gold. How important is it to have a good name? What does Scripture tell us about good name? What's one of the qualifications of an elder? Yeah, thank you. Have a good reputation among the outsiders in the community. To be known as a good person. This is one of the qualifications. This is better than silver and gold. In the book of Acts, what did, I can't think of his name now, but he wanted to buy what Peter had. Hey, where'd you get this magic? I want to pay for it. Is that something that you can buy? Well, what did he have magic? He had the Holy Spirit. He had the power of healing. He had the power of miracles. It wasn't magic. It wasn't some trick that he was trying to do. He didn't understand that. He didn't understand that. So what we have is someone who needs that knowledge. You can't buy it. The rich and the poor have this in common. The Lord is maker of them all. What did Jesus say about the poor? Yeah, you're with you always. The poor's with you always. The poor's with us always. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold and settings of silver. Like an earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold is a wise rebuker to an obedient ear. Again, using those terms that we're familiar with. What words would we use today? Maybe we don't use silver and gold. What would we use today if we were trying to turn this to modern times? Instead of silver and gold, well, we still like silver and gold, but what would we say? Like wealth? It's like, I don't know, a word fitly spoken is like a really good stock portfolio, or I don't know, I'm trying to get y'all to think. Because we're talking about things that we possibly have that could be keeping us from God. Giving. Proverbs talks a lot about giving. Honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first fruits of all your increase. So your barns will be filled with plenty, your vats will overflow with new wine. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 9 and 10. Jesus in Luke 6:38 says, "Given it will be given to you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your bosom. For with the same measure that you use, it will be measured back to you." There's also a reference, I don't know if I have it in here or not, but there's also a verse in Proverbs talking about having a bad measure, an unequal measure. Do we profit by cheating someone? Earl Nightingale, back in the 60s or 70s, he developed a series of cassettes. Yeah. For you young people, that's this little thing about this big, and you put it in a machine, and okay. It was called Lead the Field. Anybody ever heard of Lead the Field? I still have a copy, and you can download it now. You don't have to have the cassette, but I used to listen to those. And one of the things he talks about in that, he says, he made a statement. He said, nobody can get rich by hurting somebody else. And then he stopped, and he said that somebody came to him and said, well, what about these people who sell drugs? Now, they get rich. He said, yeah, they might get rich with monetary things, with material things, but they're not getting rich in their life. He said true riches comes from having that sense of responsibility when you do have wealth and what you do with it. I don't know why I have that verse in there twice, but I do, from Luke. There is that scattereth and yet increaseth, and there is that withholdeth more than his meat, but tendeth to poverty. The liberal, I picked the King James for this, the liberal soul shall be made fat, and he that watereth shall be watered also himself. Adam Clark says, a man who distributes in the right spirit gets more good himself than the poor man does who receives the bounty. That when we deal with our money in the right way, that we benefit from that. We might not necessarily see that benefit, but we benefit from that. That we get more from that. Let me turn that around. Do we get more from that? How do we get more from that? How do you feel when you give? And it can be in anything. Becoming a parent, one of the most fun things I enjoy is giving presents to my kids on birthday or Christmas or something like that. Having them open up those presents and watching them. And seeing the happiness when they open those things up. But I can remember over those same years, those children giving me something, that it was special to them to go out and pick it out and hand it to me. And maybe it was something very small. Maybe it was something I didn't want, but it came from their heart. They went and picked it out. My girls are twins. And when they were 6 years old, for the first time, we decided that Kathy would take one and take her to buy a gift for her sister, and I would take the other one to buy a gift for her sister. Christmas morning, they opened up their presents, and they had bought the exact same thing for each other. They were so excited that they had bought the same thing for each other. They're like, oh, that's what I got you. No, they were excited. Like, oh, yeah, they were really excited about that. They were happy because they found something that they wanted to give to each other. So we benefit when we give to other people. He who gives to the poor will not lack, but he who hides his eyes will have many curses. What does that mean? There's another saying, not a biblical proverb, but it says, the coward dies 1,000 deaths, but the hero only once. And you think about that, the times that maybe you've turned away from something going, oh man, no, I really don't want to do that. And the regret that you had because you didn't do it. The other day I was really busy, had a lot going on. A friend of mine passed away. And it's just a 30-minute drive to Lancaster to go to the visitation. His father and mother both worked with me, and I was close to the family. I just didn't have time. And my boss asked me, he said, "Are you going to go?" I said, "No, I don't have time. I got to get this in." He said, "I don't care about that." He said, Go. He said, "If you don't, you'll regret it." And he was right. I went. I came back. I was glad that I went. And I got the work done in the amount of time that I needed. So everything benefited from that. And had no regret for not doing the work. What do you hear about people getting close to that end? They don't sit there and go, "Man, I wish I'd spent another day in the office. I wish I could just work one more day. Spend one more hour studying that law stuff, but you kind of get the idea. What's precious to us? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard sometimes. Why do we not give to the poor? Why do we hesitate sometimes to give to somebody that's in need? Okay, use it for the wrong reason. What else? There was a big article in the paper when I lived in Memphis about these people pulled up to this fire station and they got all this stuff and did all this stuff for them, and they were so thankful and everything. About 2 weeks later, the newspaper reported that they had gone to the next town and done the exact same thing. And then you kind of lose that, oh, I really did a good thing. No, I got cheated. So the next time we're a little more cautious. And it's hard for me, somebody who has come in through my life in law enforcement. My dad was in law enforcement before me. I was in it. And it's hard for me sometimes. I mean, it's a real struggle sometimes. I really have to take a step out of my comfort zone when we're dealing with benevolence issues. Because I'm having to think about these things. Jerry Carmichael, one time he and I would just sit around talking, and he said, "Bobby," he said, "when I die and go to heaven," he said, "the first thing I'm going to ask is, did we get this benevolence thing right?" There's just so many things that we deal with that. And he said, "I don't know. I hope we did it right." I think that's what we all hope, is that we did it right. What about greed? Yes, Proverbs talks about greed. In fact, between greed and giving and work, it seems that they were about equal in terms of how many verses I found dealing with that. We shall fill all kinds of precious possessions. We shall fill our houses with spoil. So are the ways of everyone who is greedy for gain. It takes away the life of its owners. Are the greedy murderers? I'm going to do you like I do my classes at DOCJT. How many say yes? How many say no? How many don't care? So it got you on that. You got to answer one of the three ways, right? But that's what he says. He says it takes away the life of its owners when we're greedy for gain. They miss everything else. They miss everything else in life. Could it also be a spiritual thing? a mental thing, to be mentally drained because you're dealing with greed all the time? Now you see why I don't ask a lot of questions in the class on Sunday morning. Crickets. Creak, creak. What do you think about that? Okay, focused on money, not focused on people. In this, I love this, and this might not be the right place to bring this up, but I thought this was good. He is talking, I said he preached at the Getwell Road Church of Christ in Memphis. He said, this friend of mine was a superintendent for a large painting company in Memphis, asked one of his men why he could only get him to work but 4 days a week. He thought, well, I can't get this guy to work more than 4 days a week. The answer he received is comical but portrays the real life insight of the proverb. The slothful painter replied, because I can't get by on 3. Okay? I can't get by on 3. He makes enough money on 4 days that he can live. He's not going to be greedy and work that 5th day. Treasures gained by wickedness do not profit, but the righteousness delivers from death. Yahweh will not allow the soul of the righteous to hunger, but he will push away the craving of the wicked. This is out of the LSB. I like that. Yahweh will not allow the soul of the righteous to hunger, and push away the craving of the wicked. Okay. Does righteousness deliver us from death? Like I said, there were many times over those days when I was in school trying to make ends meet. We always seemed to have clothes. We always seemed to have gas to put in the car, to have food to put on the table. And no, we didn't eat, what is it? I can't think of the term now. Grits. Well, we ate grits, but grit your teeth, grit and grin, grit your teeth and grin. That's all you're going to get to eat tonight. No, we had food every night, and good food. I mean, it wasn't steaks every night or whatever, but we had good food. We were able to make it. And I don't think about that. At the time, I'm wondering where I'm going to take care of this, but it was taken care of for me. We don't see the grace of God in that. He who has a slack hand becomes poor, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. And again, wealth is not bad. He who gathers in summer is a wise son. He who sleeps in harvest is a son who causes shame. Blessings are on the head of the righteous, but violence covers the mouth of the wicked. The memory of the righteous is blessed, but the name of the wicked will rot. I don't remember if it was Andrew Carnegie or who was the big oil magnate from the 1800s? Rockefeller. One of those two wrote on a card what he wanted to do in life. And what he wrote was the first half of his life, he wanted to spend the first half of his life making money. And both of those, whether it was Carnegie or Rockefeller, it doesn't matter. They both made a lot of money. And he wanted to spend the last half of his life giving it away. How many of you have been to a Carnegie library? Yeah, Andrew Carnegie built libraries. He wanted to increase what? Knowledge. He wanted to increase knowledge. Others have built hospitals and things like that. They have used their wealth for good reason. But we have to be diligent in our work, to do a good job. The hand of the diligent makes rich. When you're a good worker, what happens? I'm sorry? You succeed. What else? You're promoted. Okay. You maybe make more money. You get promoted. You get recognition. There's honor in that. What about that slacker? I mentioned a slacker at work, and everybody here's got somebody in their mind. Oh, my goodness. Oh, yeah, so-and-so. Do just enough to get by. Just enough. What do I have to do to get by? I was part owner in a business a number of years ago, and we had a guy that worked in the business that people would walk in the door, and they would have a handful of stuff in their hands, and he'd just sit there and watch them. They're struggling to try to get in. His name was Beverly, and we'd say, Beverly, could you go help that guy out? Oh, sure. He'd go up and help him. Take care, take the stuff from him, deal with it, whatever, and he'd go sit back down. But he never took the initiative to do it on his own. You had to tell him every time. That, a few minutes later, here comes somebody else in with something. Beverly, go help that person out. Oh, okay. But he just never had the initiative on his own to do that. We sold that business, and the new owners did not want to hire Beverly. So we told Beverly, said, hey, listen, if you'll go down, you can apply for unemployment. Unemployment, you have to go every week, and you have to be there for an hour, and they try to help you find a job and do this, and then you get paid. He went 2 weeks. So we asked him after 3 weeks, why didn't you go back? That's too much trouble. I'd go sit there for an hour and maybe fill out some stuff. Maybe I'd find a job. But it was just too much trouble for him. It's all right. I'll make it. Dishonest scales are an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. When pride comes, and comes shame, but with the humble is wisdom. The integrity of the upright will guide them, but the perversity of the unfaithful will destroy them. Riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. The story is told of the storekeeper who brought in a lady and accused her of stealing from him. She had a cow, and she would make butter, and she would come and trade the butter for bread. And one day when she left, he weighed the butter and found out that he was not getting, this is a pound of butter, and it was not a full pound. So they brought her into the courts and said, how do you answer to this? She said, well, I'm poor and I don't have a set of scales. So it was a pound of butter for a pound of bread. So I had an old set of balances. And what I did is I'd take his pound of bread and put it on the scales. And that's how I knew how much to give him a pound of butter for. Okay. Dishonest scales. Dishonest scales are an abomination to the Lord. He was cheating her and then going to what? What does that sound like? What does that parable sound like in the New Testament? The unjust steward? What about the debtor who had his debt forgiven and then went around and give me what you owe me? Thank you for forgiving me, but give me what you owe me. Is that greed? He who cultivates his land will be satisfied with bread, but he who pursues empty things lacks a heart of wisdom. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think about that? Pursuing empty things. Come on, you're thinking of something. Thinking, how much longer is this class going to last? No. What are you thinking about? He who pursues empty things lacks a heart of wisdom. What do we all want to do? Walk out here this evening and find a $100 bill laying on the ground. Or go for a walk in the woods and stumble upon a gold mine or a diamond. Is that lacking wisdom? Are we pursuing empty things? The root of the righteous gives fruit. Better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasures with trouble. Better is a dinner of herbs where love is than the fatted calf with hatred. You ever had to share a meal with somebody in anger? Didn't taste very good, did it? I thought, oh man, I'd just rather just be eating cardboard than sitting here and spending this money on this meal or whatever. Adam Clark says, where the fear of God is, there is moderation and contentment of spirit. We're content. We have moderation. Eating the dinner of herbs. Not eating that stolen bread. I don't think I could eat stolen bread. I think it just wouldn't taste right. Better is a little with righteousness than great produce with injustice. Is that true? Do we see that today? If we do injustice, if we cheat our neighbor, if we cheat our customers, if we cheat our boss. Back when we had our business, we had a time clock. We had employees that would come in, and one day I was doing the time, and I noticed that everybody signed in at exactly the same time. They clocked in at exactly the same time. Now, how odd is that? Every day, they clocked in at the same time, and they clocked out at the same time. So the next morning, I got up early and I went down and I watched when they'd walk into we had a shop down there. When they'd walk into the shop, you could see the time clock through a window. And one guy walked in and he grabbed everybody's time card and punched it in. And I walked in about 30 seconds later. Hey man, what's going on? Well, I got here a little early and I thought I'd kind of clean up. I said, well, it's not early. It's time for everybody to be here. Where is everybody? They'll be here in a minute. And I said, well, let's sit down and have some coffee. And we're sitting there talking, and about 5 minutes later, the next one walks in. And he walks in and he looks, and then he goes over to get his time card, and he realizes, no, my time card's already been punched. He's caught, Then 20 minutes later, my supervisor came in. I said, hey man, you're stealing from the company. You expect 20 minutes of pay for something that you weren't here for. So I came back the next morning, and the third morning, and by the third morning, everybody was at work on time. But then I came back that afternoon when they were supposed to be getting off. I came in a half an hour early. There's no work going on. I said, what's going on? Oh, we're kind of wrapping up. I said, you got another 30 minutes to work. Well, we're just cleaning up the shop. I said, you can work for 30 more minutes. It don't take 30 minutes to clean up the shop. It's pretty clean already. I said, you're stealing from your employer. We don't think about that. But if we go to work and we don't do our job, we're stealing from our employer. Pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. Better to be of a humble spirit with the lowly than divide the spoil with the proud. Rather be with humility than to boast with the proud for something that maybe I didn't honor. I didn't gain. You ever done something and somebody else got the reward? Didn't feel good, did it? You made the winning touchdown in the ball game, and they got the honor because they made the last play or something like that, and that's what we remember, the most recent thing. Why should fools have a price in hand to buy wisdom when they have no mind to learn? What's the value of trying to buy something when you don't want to learn? The crooked of mind do not prosper, and the perverse of tongue fall into calamity. Always trying to get that deal or whatever. Now, that doesn't mean that entrepreneurship is wrong. I've talked about businesses over those few years where I was doing some of that stuff. We had 3 or 4 different businesses. Some of them succeeded, some of them didn't. They didn't succeed, we moved on. That's nothing wrong with that. But when I'm trying to get something from nothing, the rich man's wealth in his strong city, and like a high wall in his own esteem. Before destruction, the heart of a man is haughty, and before honor is humility. Like the Pharisee said, I'm glad I'm not like this sinner. Haughty before his destruction. But the tax collector said, be merciful to me, a sinner. Humble. Do not overwork to be rich. There goes the one about the guy that only worked 4 days a week. Okay. Don't overwork to be rich. Because of your own understanding, cease. Will you set your eyes on that which is not? For riches certainly make themselves wings. They fly away like an eagle toward heaven. Everything in moderation. This is something that we're seeing in society today. That we're having that balance between work and family and play and things like that. It's not always all play. It's not always all work. But we need to have that balance. I kind of grew up in that area where it was work, 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 work. And I still have that characteristic. I don't want to call it ethic, but I don't have that work ethic, but I have that characteristic that I enjoy working. I enjoy what I do. But there are times when I didn't enjoy it and I quit. I did something else. Somebody asked me recently, how many jobs have you had? Since I was 18, that was not counting when Bill and I worked at Ben Franklin. Well, we didn't work there at the same time, but we worked at Ben Franklin in high school. I've had 9 full-time jobs and 17 part-time jobs. I can't hold a job. That's right. I have a problem with that. A poor man who oppresses the poor is like a driving rain which leaves no food. Those who forsake the law praise the wicked, but such as keep the law contend with them. Evil men do not understand justice, but those who seek the Lord understand all. Better is the poor who walks in his integrity than one persevere in his ways, though he be rich. That's some thoughts on money. Thank you for your time.